So, you think you're untouchable?
Word life. This is basic thugonomics. This is basic thugonomics. Word life. I'm untouchable, but I'm forcing you to feel me. Word life. This is basic thugonomics. Word life. I'm untouchable, but I'm forcing you to feel me.
Good evening, Who Dat Nation, and happy Wednesday to our Bayou Blitz family. I hope everybody is doing well out there on this Wednesday evening. I know I am. I am happy to see a friend of mine on the other side of the screen. And with that, I am one of your co-hosts, Bob Rose, welcoming you to your Bayou Blitz podcast. Joining me is your other co-host to your Bayou Blitz podcast. His name is Brendan Boylan, and a happy Wednesday to you, Brendan, as you try to log back on with a giant snake hissing in the background from the sounds of it.
It was something. It was, I don't know. I was hearing double Bob, which was a little scary.
That's a nightmare for anybody.
Yeah, a little scary. I was hearing everything twice. I'm doing well. I hope you are. I know there's a big heat wave coming, at least to my area. I don't know if it's coming to your area.
Yep, loving it.
Yeah, no, it's going to be almost 100 degrees in Charlotte next week, and I'm not mentally prepared for that. But I'll be in the Windy City, so maybe it all works out anyway, right? I'm not here when it's 100 degrees, but we'll soon find out. Bob, we have some exciting news when it comes to the New Orleans Saints. We got some Saints Hall of Famers making some things officially official today. And it ties right in with what we're going to end up talking about, and that's, did the Saints get better defensively this offseason? Remember last week we kind of talked about whether the Saints kind of like underperformed or overperformed in certain acquisitions during the offseason. Now we're going to ultimately look at everything and say, well, did they get better or worse or the same? But we got two Saints legends that are going to be entering the Saints Hall of Fame, both legends on the defensive side of the football. Bob, for the people who don't know, who's getting into the Saints Hall here in 2025?
Well, before we get into that, you bring up Saints legends. So obviously we have to talk about, get checked or check out, which the Bayou Blitz, you and I have been proudly promoting, since I think just before Thanksgiving of last year. And, get checked or check out is, of course, the sponsor for the original Go Black and Gold celebrity charity fan cruise. Something that my family and I went on this past spring, something that we plan on being consistent participants of. We don't have specific dates yet, but they are coming soon. It's looking like a different destination rather than Cozumel, Mexico. A couple different ports of call. Similar. It's sounding like it's going to be similar dates to last year. The late March, the last week of March. Those of you that are planning and are tuning in to us, waiting for the exact word. It's coming. I read over the email last night, and not just a cruise is coming, but they're going to add a land-based trip as well as a Saints fans get together at one of the New Orleans Saints away games this year. That game is also yet to be determined, but one of the ones on the list, Brendan, is the one down in your neck of the woods, the New Orleans Saints trip to the Carolina Panthers in the fall. We at the Bayou Blitz, I'm going to get in contact with Shireen DeWalt. Should have done it this evening, so shame on me. But Shireen, if you're tuning in, I will be calling you in the next day or two, to see what kind of announcements that we can get together for you for, the Go Black and Gold celebrity charity fan cruise, and of course for Get Checked or Check Out. Having said that, the Bayou Blitz and Get Checked or Check Out wants to focus on one specific health related issue every single month. And this month is Cataract Awareness Month. We always talk about, lately the mantra has been, and I'm proud that the mantra has been, mental health focus, get checked or check out. I also promotes everybody, doing just that, making sure you go to your regular checkups. If you do receive some harsh news, some scary news, this foundation is in place to point families in the direction that you need to go, for treatment, for resources, for any questions that you might have to get answered. So you can go to the Get Checked or Check Out website at the bottom of the screen for any questions that you might have regarding that issue. Any donations, if you have some spare money, this foundation, you can't ask for a better cause, but they need our help. They need your help. To help fund these things that they're setting up for patients and for families, so on and so forth. But again, June is Cataract Awareness Month. People that keep up on your mental health, people that keep up on your physical health, great for you. But what sometimes goes kind of forgotten is your eyesight. So, make sure that you go to those eye doctor appointments. Make sure that you avoid prolonged exposure to the sun, because that's harsh on the eyes. Excess alcohol consumption can also be harmful to the eyes. People associate cataracts, with an affliction that strikes as you get older, but it can also be affected by, the amount of sunlight that you get, especially without proper eye protection. The amount of alcohol you consume, and even hereditary factors, genetic factors. So, like we said, like Get Checked or Check Out wants you to do, not just in June, but always, is make sure you keep up on those eye doctor appointments.
And Bob, I really should have said this beforehand. Just wanted to give a quick shout and condolences to the Korn family. Will Korn, who I worked very closely with during my time at Gardner-Webb, he was the manager of all facilities. So anytime I needed to get into the arena early or I forgot something, Will was my go-to guy. Will unfortunately passed away this week, so I wanted to send my condolences to the family, Gardner-Webb University. That knew Will. Great soul, and he really embodied what made Gardner-Webb special, and he'll be missed greatly by that community. Going back to Get Checked or Check Out, hey, look, Bob, they missed me so much. On the cruise, they decided they had to come to me to make it more convenient for me, right? I'm just kidding. But I'll be really excited to see a lot of you here in my backyard. That also means we got to figure out a Bayou Blitz live show in the city, somewhere on the outskirts of the city. I have a few people that I think would probably allow us to do so. So we're going to try to make that happen. Not try, we will make it happen. It's just a matter of where we're able to do so. So some exciting things going on. We can't wait to share more with you, and I can't wait to see some of you. Bob spoke so highly of you guys, the fans on the cruise, fans of the team, Bayou Blitz family, and people that tune in to us week in and week out. So I'm really excited to get to see some of you guys and hang out and have a good time, not just in Charlotte, but also some of these other excursions that are going to be happening here in the near future. So it'll be a good time. So, Bob, let's get back to it. Hall of Fame inductees for the New Orleans Saints in 2025. These guys going into the Saints Hall of Fame. I don't know about long overdue, but overdue, I think.
Yeah, they are. First of all, congratulations to Ed Daniels, who unfortunately Ed just passed recently, but Ed received the Fleur de Lis award given out by the Saints Hall of Fame, yearly, and Steve Gleason received the Saints Courage Award I believe I got the terminology right. That's the first time that this has been given out. I do not know if it's going to be given out annually, but certainly any accolade or award that Steve Gleason has coming his way, especially one in the realm of courage and resilience, is certainly deserved to Mr. Steve Gleason. But the two new players that are the newest members, well, they'll be officially inducted later on this year. But they received word that they are going to be the newest members of the Saints Hall of Fame, or two defensive backs. Brett Maxey, a safety for New Orleans from 1985 to 92, I believe. You'll have to refer back to my article on Saints Wire for the specific years, but I believe that's the realm. Basically, Brett Maxey was a ball hawking safety for those dome patrol units. People want to talk about the linebacking core, and that's the best foursome of linebackers in NFL history. But this team also had a great defensive line and a very, very good secondary. Brett Maxey was a part of that. And the player who you talked about, it's funny because when we talked a couple years ago on our broadcast about the Saints Hall of Famers, we initially thought that Tracy Porter was already in. It took some research to figure out, oh, wow, Tracy Porter didn't make it yet. Well, we don't have to say that anymore because Tracy Porter joins Brett Maxey as the newest member of the Saints Hall of Fame. Of course, Porter is most famously known for the interception return that clinched the New Orleans Saints Super Bowl victory over the Indianapolis Colts. But don't forget that Porter also put them in position just to get to the Super Bowl. He intercepted Brett Favre late in the fourth quarter during the NFC Championship, when the Vikings were driving for a potential game-winning field goal. Well, his interception stopped that, sent the game into overtime, where, of course, the Saints won. And Porter, second-round choice from Indiana. Back in 2008, he had a hell of a Saints career too. I mean, obviously he did if he's in the franchise Hall of Fame. But a very, very good cornerback. You could argue that he's in the top 5 of cornerbacks in New Orleans Saints history. If he's outside your top 5, you definitely have to put him in your top 10. So congratulations to Brett Maxey and Tracy Porter, our newest New Orleans Saints Hall of Famers.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And the funny thing with Tracy is obviously when you have a moment in not just Saints history, but NFL history that is that large, that gets so much attention, you almost forget about the rest of his tenure in New Orleans. And it wasn't very long. I mean, let's be honest, 2008 to 2011, not a super long tenure in New Orleans, but was very good throughout his time in New Orleans. Bounced around a little bit late in his career. Had a little bit of a resurgence in Chicago. I don't remember what year that was. I want to say like 2015, maybe.
Sounds about right.
But had a late career resurgence and was playing some really good football. But yeah, I figured, and you'd kind of talked about it, is I figured he would have got in already just solely off of the one play. But like you said, I don't want to say people forget because Saints fans don't forget, but I think a broader and more national audience forget about the NFC Championship a lot because of what happened in the Super Bowl. And I would be one to argue that the NFC Championship interception probably was and is more valuable than the Super Bowl interception. And that's because in the grand scheme of things, yes, the interception return for a touchdown of Peyton Manning sealed the whole game. But the Saints were leading. Indianapolis would have had to score a touchdown just to tie, to where in the NFC Championship game, Brett Favre doesn't throw it across his body, maybe just even slides. They're in a chance. They have a good chance to win the game. Something-yard field goal. But Tracy makes the play. And for a brief moment, I'm sure you were in the same boat, for a brief moment when he started running the other way and the camera hadn't quite panned yet, you're like, oh my God, does he have blockers ahead of him? And then you realize, like, no, it's not going to happen. But for like half a second, it was this like beautiful moment. And of course, the Super Bowl interception. I guess we'll say a mutual friend of ours, because he's interviewed you now, is Thomas Manning. He is related to the Mannings. And so I remind him constantly of Tracy Porter at every moment that I possibly can. That Tracy cost your cousin another ring. You're welcome. He's watching just for that another reminder. But I like you said, I think it is overdue. I don't know about long overdue, but it is overdue. And Maxey too, a guy who was a vital part of some of the greatest defenses in Saints history. You could make a case some of the greatest defenses in the history of the league, depending on how you look at it and compare stats.
Listen, I think if the New Orleans Saints would have won even one Super Bowl, in the late '80s or early '90s, that defense would have been talked about right alongside the Chicago Bears, the Pittsburgh Steelers, the Baltimore Ravens, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, Seattle Seahawks, 2015 Denver Broncos. The Saints would have been right in that conversation. For greatest defenses of all time. I'm 100% convinced of it because their numbers, matched or bettered all of those other defenses that I mentioned. But the only difference was all those other teams that I mentioned won at least one championship. New Orleans didn't even manage to get to a Super Bowl. So, they pull one out, during that Jim Mora era. I think the conversation is completely different.
Yeah, well, it also conversation would be completely different if they had a quarterback. Well, and just so I don't get some hate, because I know there's got to be a quarterback in there that all of you or some of you or one of you love. The offensive line as well. If they had an offensive line in general with a quarterback, it would have been. Then the offensive line wasn't brutally terrible. Man, it's just, and you go back and you look at some of those rosters, Bob, and you go, how? Like, how did this team not succeed? I know injuries had something to do with it as well. But Rubin and Dalton as running backs in the 80s and that defense, and you go, how did this team not go to an NFC championship game? It'll be I don't want to say a great mystery because the film's there and you can see, but as we like to say, our favorite term on the show, on paper, that team should have done a lot better than they did because they had a lot of talent all over. And like you said, because the Dome Patrol gets a lot of attention because they are the greatest four linebackers that ever played together on the team, you do have guys like Maxey who get forgotten. I think that I think Rubin gets forgotten a lot just because the peak was so small because of the right?
Same with Dalton. You want to talk about Jim Wilkes, Frank Warren up front on that defense. Toy Cook, the cornerback for that team. Eric Martin. Not an overly talented receiver, in my opinion, but definitely productive. And then after Eric Martin came along Quinn Early, extremely short production period with the Saints, but very talented guy as well. Like you said, you look on paper and you're like, how the hell did this team not at least squeak one by? And I understand that era of the NFC would just, it was a meat grinder to get through. I mean, you had the San Francisco 49ers in your own division, a legitimate dynasty, unlike the tainted dynasty of the New England Patriots. Yeah, I said it. Then the early 90s mini dynasty of the Dallas Cowboys, the Washington Redskins. I mentioned the Bears, the New York Giants. Those are just teams in your conference. And that's not to say the Philadelphia Eagles had their run in the late 80s, similar to the Saints, didn't manage to get to a Super Bowl, but were very, very talented. The LA Rams with Jim Everett, and Kevin Green in your own division as well. And again, these are just the NFC that we're talking about. These are some of the greatest teams, single season or for prolonged stretches in NFL history that the Saints had to contend with on a yearly basis.
Yeah, I was going to say, the NFC really dominated the NFL back then, in the 80s and early 90s. So it is what it is. But those guys do talk about because they didn't win. So it is nice when some of those guys get the proper recognition.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
For Maxey, I think it is very proper for him to get into the Hall. So that's the exciting news. And now Bob and I will go to the debate desk and debate whether the Saints got better on the defensive side. And next week we'll talk about whether the Saints got better on the offensive side of the ball. I think defense is interesting. I guess I'll open the conversation like this. It's interesting because this is going to be a completely different defense.
Mm-hmm.
And you have to remember that when you make these arguments and have these discussions. But right now, we're really just looking at the team on paper because there isn't a whole lot to go off of, right? You got voluntary and now mandatory OTAs, and that's really all you got to go off of is did this team get better? And that's not game speed, game film. I mean, we talk about these things every offseason, right? It's different when you get to the game. It's different in game speed. It's different even preseason. That's why I think you and I are some of the weirdos in the world that think preseason is super valuable, while everybody else is like just doing away with it. I'm like, no. Preseason is super valuable to a lot of people.
Yeah, I mean the games are brutal to watch, but when you do what we do for a living, you can still get a lot out of it.
Yeah, and coaches get a lot out of it, and guys who end up sneaking onto your practice squad or barely making your 53-man. That's the reason they do. More times than not, like yes, you have your practice guys that really stand out, but for the most part, they have to produce in the preseason, and that's why they end up landing on whether it be the Saints roster or somewhere else. I mean, look at Taysom Hill on the Saints roster because of very impressive preseason in Green Bay. That's one example. What was the guy's name? Austin Carr had a really impressive preseason with New England. Ends up in New Orleans for 3 or 4 years. Not super productive numbers wise, but a guy who made the roster.
Well, I mean, look at friends of ours, people that have been on our show, Delvin Breaux, Pierre Thomas, Lance Moore, Michael Lewis. All those guys were undrafted, which basically means they wouldn't, if not for training camp and preseason performances, they probably wouldn't have had a shot in the NFL, let alone with the New Orleans Saints. So I mean, you don't have to go any further than some of the jerseys and names in the background of both both of our backdrops here, to realize how important NFL preseason can be.
Absolutely, and we're not quite there yet with this team. So these are some almost way too early thoughts on whether this team got better defensively. Some of it's personnel moves, some of it's fit. So let's start with fit first, and let's talk about a new defensive coordinator, a new defensive system, and then we can kind of work our way from there. So
okay, so we'll start. You want to start with coaches and then go into specific positions?
Yeah, I think that's smart, just because it is a completely different system. If we were comparing apples to apples, that's one thing, but apples to oranges is a different thing.
And I know Dennis Allen is very hated throughout, Who Dat Nation, and I understand why. But I will die on the hill that by saying that Dennis Allen was a hell of a defensive coach, and especially the later years of the Sean Payton, Drew Brees era, the Saints would not have been as good as they were without Dennis Allen and the performance of that defense. Now having said that, I think the overall message, certainly Dennis Allen as a head coach was unmitigated disaster. But I think even in his voice in the defensive room, and the last 2 or 3 years, they sort of started playing musical chairs with the coordinators. Whenever that starts happening, it almost always spells trouble. Maybe not immediately, although in this case it did. And as a result, and I'm not blaming it on only coaching. The performance certainly on the field had a lot to do with this too. a recently very proud and very formidable Saints defense slipped to 30th overall and 31st against the run last year. Yeah, I blame the players on the field, but you also needed a new message in the coaching staff, and you got one in Brandon Staley. I can't say I'm in love with the Brandon Staley system that he's going to bring over, because I do question about the overall personnel fit, which we'll kind of talk about more when we get into specific positions here in a moment. But Brandon Staley, kind of like Dennis Allen, Brandon Staley does not have a good record as a head coach, but you can't deny Brandon Staley's ability to coach defenses. And along with Staley, and this one surprised me a little bit, all the position coaches that they brought in to work under Staley were guys that they brought directly in from college. Bo Davis, the defensive line coach, and the secondary coach that they brought over from Texas, are the two I'm most excited about. Because I really like them as coaches. But yeah, I mean, all of Brandon Staley's assistants are college guys, which tells me that there's going to be maybe a youthful exuberance in this room, that might even be infectious to the veterans. So I do believe, I mean, certainly it was time for Dennis Allen to go as a coach, as head coach, and you knew he wasn't going to be demoted to defensive coordinator, despite what a lot of you fans wanted, because that just doesn't happen in professional sports. But yeah, I mean, I think overall in that defensive room, a new staff, a new voice, a new face, probably a new scheme, was needed, and now you got one, and a pretty experienced and successful coordinator in Staley.
Yeah, I like what you said with youthful exuberance, because while the NFL game will always be faster, right? I do think the college game is starting to have influence in spreading everything out, getting to the line quicker, playing a little bit quicker in between snaps, and having some of those coaches come up to the NFL level. I do think brings this kind of fun, youthful, I don't want to say testy, but experimental might be a better word, options when you're going and implementing a new system and getting new ideas and going, hey, well, this is how the college game is going. How can we, how can we make adjustments and learn from college to kind of pave the way at the professional level? Like, I do think there's options there, and I like that. I like that it's completely different, right? And because of that, and we kind of joked about this when we were talking about draft prospects, particularly defensive backs, and some of the guys they ended up selecting, was when you throw on film, because Dennis Allen had been there for so long, and it was this aggressive man-to-man coverage for so long, you throw on tape and you go, okay, well, this guy isn't bad in, like, press man and super aggressive, but like he's much better at these like zone coverage. You go, oh right, because that's what they're going to be running. So I do think it's a breath of fresh air. I think it does put everybody on a level playing, which is unique as well, right? Because you're not going to have younger guys come in, or you're not going to have quote unquote Brandon Staley guys come in and have necessarily an upper hand on you're going to have this kind of level playing field. Everybody gets to learn together. I do think, we had Courtney on a couple of weeks ago talking about kind of continuity and wanting to be, friends with your teammates and spend time together and do this, and do that. It's a lot easier to do that when you're all on the same playing field.
Mm-hmm.
Feel like this pressure of, oh, I got to impress this guy because he knows the whole playbook. Or I got to impress this guy because whatever. And you feel more of that human connection and being able to go like, hey, like we're learning this together. Can we sit down next Tuesday night, have some dinner, and go over this, and this? I do think there's a good component to that. I don't know if I will say that the defensive staff got better. It got more youthful. It is a healthy change. And it is one of those, time will tell. And I think that is the only time we're going to use that term when we talk about positions, and did they get better here or defensively as a whole? This is the only time I want us to use that term. Is like time will tell when it comes to the coaching staff, but there are a lot of positive signs into what this could become.
All right, so defense. Brandon Staley is expected, to run predominantly, a 3-4 base system, and I call it a base system because a lot of these pieces are going to be interchangeable, but let's do our positional rankings based off of a 3-4 alignment, and let's start with the defensive line. Because we were
including edge guys on the defensive line.
No.
Okay, that's a whole separate category. Cool.
It is. Let's go. Let's go with who we expect to be the down lineman. Which is basically, and there's a long list, but the top of the depth chart are Cam Jordan, who's going to probably see some edge as well. But Cam Jordan, Godshaw, Devon Godshaw, Nathan Shepard, Kalen Saunders, Brian Brissy, those guys, Vernon Brockton. Let's focus on that group, and then we'll do edge rush separate. Do you want to go first?
Yeah, I'll go first. I think it was very underwhelming what they decided to do. Now, with that said, you look at guys like Nathan Shepard or Kalen Saunders, and my biggest problem is like neither of those guys are true like nose tackles. Right? So it's like, okay, well, where do they fit in this? Because I don't really see them being like a 3-4 defense. No offense to Caleb, specifically at his size, like there is no way in hell you're playing him as a 3-4 defensive end. So it's like, okay, weird. Gonna be interesting how they work that out. Brian Brissy is an interesting one too because he's a little bit of a tweener, right? Like he doesn't really fit as a true nose tackle, obviously, but he has the athletic skills to move out and be like a 3-4 defensive end. But I don't know, right? Like that's another thing. Like I don't know. Does he really fit there, or is it like I don't want to say square peg in a round hole with Brian Brissy, but he might be more of an oval being tried to fit into, right? It's like it's a similar shape, but does it work? Like I don't know. So that was a little underwhelming. Some of the guys that they signed and drafted like maybe fit that 3 technique a little bit better, but it's still not. I'm still not in love with anything. It is a lot more question marks. And then what you said with Cameron Jordan, I think, kind of applies in a similar way. Is at Cameron Jordan's day right now, I think he sets up better as a third down, standing up as an edge rusher on third down. But if you asked me 5 years ago, I might say, you know what? I think Cam could be your every down defensive end in a 3-4. I don't know at his age if that's the best spot.
Yeah.
Which then questions of like, well, what did you do to improve? Because they didn't improve. They did not get better. If anything, because of the questions that I have concerning how these guys fit in this system, they might have got worse. Because the system fit is not very good for a lot of these guys. I like some of these guys. Right? I still really like what Brian Brissy could become. That's why I said oval into a circular hole. Like it might work, but I need to see it first. When it comes to like Shepard and Saunders, I think you're just kind of SOL there because you really don't fit what they want to do. Kind of like Jamal Williams last year. Now, given Jamal had a bad year, even the snaps he got. But when they started moving away from what we thought Jamal could be, it was very evident and very clear, very quick, that he just no longer fit what they wanted to do in the Clint Kubiak system. Right? That's how I kind of feel about Shepard and Saunders, that you're just going to kind of if you make the roster, you're not going to see a lot of snaps, and you're going to kind of just drift away at the end of the season and not be around anymore. But then that poses the question: why would they hold a roster spot then if you know that they're not going to fit what you want? That's why I say they got worse at this position, because you have more questions than you do answers at this point in the offseason.
Yeah, I agree. I look at this defensive line, and mainly because of system fit, I'm going to say that they got worse too. On paper, I love Brian Bresee, and honestly, I think that this could be a very good system for Brian Bresee, because even though he is a bigger guy, he's not going to play on the nose. Brandon Staley has always liked more big but athletic, defensive ends in his three-man fronts. Especially with San Diego and the Chargers and the Rams. Bresee could fit that profile, and if they have a nose tackle that could just eat up those double team blocks, and if they have an actual productive stand-up edge rusher, Bresee is going to see a lot more one-on-one blocking than he has at any other point in his career. During the 3-4 alignments. Cam, I'm with you. Cam's best days are behind him. I don't think there's any doubt about that. He's going to be a situational player at best. Which means now you have to look on the roster to see, okay, who is going to take snaps from Cam, so that way he doesn't have to play 70 and 80% of these snaps, and he could be more effective in a situational role. Where's the fit? Is Nathan Shepard athletic enough to play on the outside? Not as a stand-up rusher, but on the end. I think that they might try him there, because, as you said, he's not a nose tackle. Vernon Brockton, titled as a defensive tackle from Texas, but you watch Brockton's film, he's not a nose tackle. But I question whether he has the athleticism for a 3-4 end. Kalen Saunders, same thing. And where's your nose tackle? You traded for Devon Gottschall, but you need more than one. So, basically because of fit, I don't think that the defensive line, the down linemen, got better this offseason. And when you're talking about a 30th ranked defense, if you didn't get better, in my book, you got worse. So by that notion, I'm just going to keep the baton and go right in, sprint right into edge rushers.
Perfect.
Worse, because you did nothing. You had 17 sacks combined from your edge rushers last year. Now I'm counting the down lineman, from the 4-3 spot, which is counting Peyton Turner gone. Cam Jordan we just addressed. You're rolling with Carl Granderson and Chase Young. Now we think that Chase Young could benefit from this system because it puts him in a stand-up spot out wide. It should benefit his athleticism. But how are you going to, you don't want him or Granderson for that matter dropping into coverage. So, which means those two have to be basically the old style of, the zone blitz, the zone blitz that Dom Capers and Dick LeBeau used with the 90s Pittsburgh Steelers and Kevin Green, Greg Lloyd and those guys. You never saw Green in coverage. You never saw Lloyd in coverage. They were stand-up pass rushers. That's what you have to do with Chase Young and Carl Granderson. If you do that, I could see them both being effective here. But again, we kept talking over and over and over last year about how neither Granderson or Chase Young are finishers, and you didn't get a finisher this offseason. You're going to move Isaiah Foskey to a stand-up rusher. Jordy Haltberg loves the move. We will see. I mean, it's probably Foskey's last chance to make any kind of an impact. But outside of that, you didn't sign an edge rusher in free agency. Mike Rumpf is nothing more than a special teams guy. And you didn't draft one until the 7th round. Now, I like Fadil Diggs, but like we say over and over on this show, your rounds 5, 6, and 7 choices, you hope to strike gold, but you don't expect to, because statistically you're not going to. So, you look at this edge, the edge rusher spot, and you say, what did the Saints do on paper to get better personnel wise? And the answer is nothing. So yeah, if you didn't do anything and your sack total from this particular position was among the worst in the NFL, by definition, you got worse.
I don't know if there's much I need to say. The only thing that I'll put a little asterisk next to is kind of what you said with Chase Young. I do like the fact that he's moving back into a stand-up. I think that suits him a lot better. I think that was the prototype of him coming out of college that a lot of us thought would be very successful. I am concerned that they threw that much money at Chase Young because he signed a prove-it deal and he didn't really prove it.
No, he didn't prove shit.
Like, you still, like, to me, the Young thing last year, you still saw flashes of why he was the number 2 overall selection. But that's been his whole career. We've seen flashes of why you were the number 2 selection. We've seen flashes of why people think you can be an elite pass rusher. But flashes only get you so far. Now, that's more than, like, Jadeveon Clowney. I like throwing shade at that guy. Mostly because he was linked to the team forever. It never happened. But, like, we never saw flashes there. Right? It was kind of almost like, oh, okay. With Chase, at least you've seen flashes. But flash in the pan guys that continue to make flashes in the pan and never start a fire, they typically just never start a fire. Keep throwing you sparks and you keep hoping. Let's move to linebacker, which is an interesting one because you and I have said for years now, probably 3 years now, hey, Demario Davis still playing awesome football. Still a super fun dude to watch live and then watching the film back. But Demario Davis isn't getting any younger. I think the Saints should probably, look at finding a replacement for Demario Davis. And every year we sit in the same conversation. We go, they still have not found a replacement for Demario Davis. But with Demario, Pete Warner, they draft a linebacker this year. There are some things that we like.
Mm-hmm.
But this is still a team where, the meme of the guy, he's got a stick, like a tree branch stick. He's poking and he's just like, do something. Very similar to edge rusher. I feel the same about linebacker. Now, they did a little bit more, right? They drafted a guy.
Mm-hmm.
But it's still not something that gets me excited. It's like, okay, they drafted a guy in, day 2, day 3? Was it day 2 pick or day 3 pick?
Day 3. Fourth round, so early day 3.
Early day 3 pick. Like, okay, cool. Like, I think Stutzman could be a really good downhill linebacker in the NFL. And that's what you're banking on based off of his tape and where you selected him. But that still leaves you with a hole where it's like, is Demario Davis the only linebacker that we could trust in coverage consistently? Probably. I think Pete Warner's good at what Pete Warner's good at. And we've seen what he's good and what he's not good at. I think he's okay in coverage. I don't think he's an absolute liability in coverage.
We'll agree. We'll disagree there.
I don't trust him with some of the speedy running backs. I don't trust him with the bigger tight ends. But I wouldn't be designing things to make sure that Pete's just never in coverage ever. So that's, fair. I guess, where I'm at is like, he's not like an oh my God liability where it's like you're holding your breath anytime he has to cover anybody. But also he's a guy that opposing offensive coordinators are going to pick on if they have a guy like Jahmyr Gibbs. If you give me Jahmyr Gibbs versus Pete Warner for an entire Sunday, toast, right? Like Eli Apple burnt toast.
Mm-hmm.
That's kind of what I mean. So, again, like you did a little something, but I don't think you got progressively better. I don't know if they necessarily got worse. So I'm going to say they're about the same, but I don't think they got any better at that position.
See, I look and I believe that the Saints got slightly better. If Demario Davis, again, a lot of ifs. If Demario Davis can hold off Father Time for one more year. Demario did not have his best year last year, but I don't think he's lost a lot. I just think part of that was just the poor performance of the defenders in front of him. So again, this is going to not only affect Davis, but Werner, Danny Stutzman, the entire linebacking core is how well those guys play in front of. Can they keep blockers off of them? In other words, but I like the pickup with Stutzman. I like Werner's fit in a 3-4 because he's not going to be in spaces often. He might be he'd be in coverage, and Werner is capable in short zone coverages. And he's very good, at identifying the ball and going to get it. He'll fill up he'll fill up the stat sheet with tackles. Solid but unspectacular is the best way I can describe Pete Werner. And that's why we keep talking about they need to find an heir apparent for Demario Davis, because it's not Pete Werner. You need somebody that's spectacular. I'm not saying Danny Stutzman is that guy, but Danny Stutzman is a thumper. He's a fit for this system. You want to find an athletic guy, though, a guy that has the agility that Davis does in coverage. At least he did in college. Was Jalen Ford. And, I think that Jalen Ford could have a decent year in this system. And I think that Brandon Staley is going to find a role for Danny Stutzman. So I will say I agree that the Saints did not get progressively. You still there?
There we go. You cut out. Your mic cut out.
Okay, hold on.
Excuse the technical difficulties. I mean, I had some at the beginning of the show, so you're due, right? You got to have some as well. But I believe what Bob was saying is being
okay. How about now?
No, you're good. There's Bob.
Okay. I don't think the Saints got progressively better, but I will say that overall the position looks better on paper. I like the addition of Stutzman. I like the fit of Jalen Ford. I think if Demario Davis still has football left in him, he's the type of player that will perform well, will stand out in any system. And Pete Werner will have a solid fit. So I maybe not massively so, but I think the Saints did get better at linebacker.
Okay.
Is it my turn? My turn to keep the baton?
Yeah, keep the baton. Let's knock out the entire secondary because we are running out of time this evening.
All right. Well, I mean, let's make this quick then. When at cornerback, when you lose Marshawn Lattimore and Paulson Adebo, it's impossible to say that you got better at that position. I like the 4th round draft choice of Quincy Riley from Louisville. If they bring in Asante Samuel, big if. But if they bring in Asante Samuel and he's healthy, I think that it could stabilize the position. And I think Kool-Aid McKinstry is a hell of a cornerback. I think he's going to have a good year. But the other side is the big question for me. You have to have, whether it's Quincy Riley, Asante Samuel, Isaac Yiadom, one of those guys have to cement a role alongside or on the opposite side of McKinstry so you can move Alontae Taylor around. So again, we're talking big ifs. Until that happens, you look on paper and you say the Saints cornerback unit did not get better. They got worse. Now the safeties, I think they got better. I loved Will Harris, but I think Justin Reed is an upgrade over Will Harris. And I think I hated the 3rd round draft choice of Jonas Sanker. But the more I think about it, the more it makes sense, because if they use Sanker close to the line of scrimmage and in the tackle box, that means that you don't have to use Mr. Olay, Tyrann Mathieu, down in the tackle box. You can allow him to roam and read quarterbacks and make plays on the ball in coverage, which is what Tyrann Mathieu still does best. So like at linebacker, I'm not going to say the Saints had a massive upgrade at safety, but I do think they got better. Is getting better at safety overcome the dip in cornerback? No, I don't think so. So I don't think I don't think the secondary as a whole got better. I think that they got slightly worse. At least on paper, because again, you don't lose talents like Marshawn Lattimore and Paulson Adebo. You didn't use a first or second round draft, where you couldn't use a first or second round draft choice to replace them. Therefore, by definition, you got worse.
Yeah, I agree. I think the corner spot, though they got on paper worse, I think it does say a lot, the amount of faith they have in Kool-Aid McKinstry. With what they chose to do this offseason, I think they're expecting big things, but there's a lot of big ifs with that. Like you mentioned, Reed's a big addition, not one that I necessarily expected the team to make. You did. I believe you had made that prediction early on that he was the guy that they were going to target. Like you said with Sanker, it makes a lot of sense to have more of a box guy, similar to, in a way, to what Roman Harper was for the Saints, allowing your other safeties to really be ball hawking guys. And shoot, like you said, for Tyrann Mathieu, while he does not come up and make the big hits that he once did in his career, the Honey Badger still finds the football. And even in a really bad year for the team last year, you did see moments where Tyrann Mathieu was able to read the eye of the quarterback and make a play, and that's what he's getting paid for at this point in his career. I also like the fact that you have Mathieu and Reed, guys that were a part of winning organizations in winning football, that gets to mentor these younger guys.
Mm-hmm.
Through a new system, but just in general, because this is going to be a very youthful secondary in terms of young corners. And say what you will about a guy like Alontae Taylor, Isaac Yiadom. Like, yes, they've been in the league a few years, but they're still young guys when it comes to the NFL. So I think it's massive to have those guys back there. I think it's also massive when you are installing a new system to have guys like DeMario, Tyrann Mathieu, on the defensive side, Cameron Jordan, guys at every level that are proven winners and proven leaders that can help install what you want to do and also step up in situations and make sure guys are where they need to be. I think that's going to be ultra important for this team. I'll go ahead and preview and I guess hint a little bit at our next conversation with the offensive side. I'm a little more concerned about that side when we talk about leadership. We talk about guys that are going to be able to step up and be influential in a new system. That is a little bit more of a concern for me than it is defensively.
That might be a scary breakdown from you then, because we agreed that the defense did not get better they got worse on the defensive line, got worse at edge, got slightly better at linebacker, and got worse overall in the secondary. So, if the offensive preview from your perspective is worse than that, maybe Brendan is one of those people that the Saints, thinking the Saints are going to win 3 games this year.
Worse in the sense of I question where the leadership is coming from.
That's fair, and that's fair.
Right. I think more so that I think they're I think they have a talented group at certain spots. I really do. But Alvin's not a vocal guy. And so I question where the vocal leadership is going to come from. Something that was clearly lacking a year ago. But we'll save that conversation for next week. Bob, you're busy. You're writing for 2 sites. You're still, flexing your muscles and being like, I'm the best journalist on the Bayou Blitz podcast. You always have been. So it's no big deal.
Thanks.
But you're pushing out a lot of articles. You're pushing out a lot of content, even in what we call a dead season this time of year for really football journalism, really any journalism outside of baseball, which say what you will.
Baseball sucks.
Oh, well, see, I was going different. I enjoy baseball at certain parts of the year. The regular season is way too long. Sorry, baseball peers. It is way too long. You cannot keep my attention for 160 games of a regular season. Let's figure out a way to make the games shorter, the games quicker, and the regular season shorter. Shout out Savannah Bananas. I know it's a completely different thing, but the fact that they cap their games at 2 hours, wonderful. Wonderful. Major League Baseball will never do that, but that was a wonderful thought. It was an awesome, awesome experience. But Bob, where can people follow you and your work for the multiple places you're putting out content and keep up with you and keep up with us, not just with the Bayou Blitz, but also as we have some exciting news that'll be coming down the pipelines with Get Checked or Check Out.
Yeah, it might be a dead period for NFL football, but not a dead period for us. As Brendan said, I am working for 2 sites, primarily with Saints Wire right now through USA Today, but also still writing some pieces for Athlon Sports. You could check me out on both of those sites, but I also post all of my articles from either site on my personal social media, which is Bob Rose on Facebook, at Bobby R 2613 over on Twitter. Or X Twitter. Make sure that if you aren't already, that you are a member of our Bayou Blitz Facebook page and Facebook groups, as well as X page, X Twitter page. I can't just say X or X page because it just in my head it makes it sound like something else. And since Brendan won't let me promote an Bayou Blitz OnlyFans page,
Please don't.
We're getting there. If someone doesn't come through with money pretty soon, you're going to see the Bayou Blitz OnlyFans page come out.
Yeah, that was a very subtle way of saying we're poor. Thank you.
I'm not telling you, nothing about Bob Rose. It's subtle, but yeah, check out all those. Lately I'm doing what I call robotic content. Saints history of jersey numbers as I count down towards kickoff, and Saints player of the day who is wearing that particular jersey number as well. But we're covering breaking news. I'll be doing, training camp battles very, very shortly here, as well as dark horse candidates to watch throughout the preseason. So like Brendan said, the content is always going to be there. Just make sure you check it out. And again, go to that Get Checked or Check Out website. Donate, please. Help them out. Help us. Help them. Because at the end of the day, they're helping us. Stay tuned for the upcoming cruise dates and other event dates from Get Checked or Check Out. Brendan and I at the Bayou Blitz will update you as we get that information as well. And don't forget that June is Cataract Awareness Month.
For myself, you can follow me just about everywhere at BT Boylan. That now includes TikTok, which is an interesting place. I can't get that algorithm down. I don't understand. You can follow me with Athlon Sports as well. I promise I'll get back to putting some content out for you guys that are like, what has happened to Brendan? And of course, you can follow us here at the Bayou Blitz at Bayou Blitz Pod on the X Twitter. Join the Bayou Blitz Facebook group if you have not already. Subscribe to us over on YouTube at Bayou Blitz Pod. We're excited, as we get closer to the season, as some more details come out of, what's kind of live events we can do during the season, A, but B, how we can incorporate you guys into this show even more. So continue to tune in with us, continue to check in, continue to get checked or check out. And until sometime next week, whenever I decide to fly back in from the Windy City, who knows? We'll figure it out at some point. That's Bob Rose. I'm Brendan Boylan. Find peace, spread love, practice positivity. We'll see you next week for another edition of the Bayou Blitz podcast. See you then.
So, you think you're untouchable?
Word life. This is basic thugonomics. This is basic thugonomics. Word life. I'm untouchable, but I'm forcing you to feel me. Word life. This is basic thugonomics. Word life. I'm untouchable, but I'm forcing you to feel me.